Hey guys, Thomas the Salute Genie here, aka Mustached. I'm here with my most different video to date. For those of you who don't know, I typically do movie reviews and Let's Plays, and once in a blue moon I'll often do a Zeke Dartel challenges where I put on a different persona and challenge the biggest content creators slash superheroes and supervillains, all for the attention or whatever. So, with all that out of the way, I decided, with all this social and political pressure, and with the politics being in the big news recently, I figure I'd take my jab into that realm. Why not? My channel's pretty much still small anyways. I'm sure it'll be of no consequence to me what I say about sex and gender. That's right, we're talking about the age-old discussion about the differences between sex and gender. This video will primarily focus on gender rather than sex. And what I've noticed, typically, and this happened years ago, is that people, primarily on the right of the political spectrum, would try to dictate that there are two genders. That is wrong. That is so unequivocally wrong that this video is here to provide the answer to the age-old question, are there more than two genders? And in 2022, we still seem, based off of videos I've seen very recently, still seem to have a very poor grasp between the difference between sex and gender. And it baffles me that people on the right say that there are only two genders, and that people on the left keep confusing gender with sex. And I get it. Those two things, in a social sense, when you're out in the world, when you're out often thinking about it hard enough, you might just interchange those words pretty regularly. People do that on the on-day. In the political spheres, however, people use these words to sort of start to subscribe these, changes that they want to see, i.e. the whole political debate about, how to, the whole transsexual thing is now the big thing in the air, as we all know. Anyone in politics, anyways, would know. So, this video, in hopes, will be a sort of educational guide through this confusing world of sex and gender, and hopefully reevaluate these things in the modern era of 2022. Okay? And we'll use a little bit of history in there too, so get ready for it. Okay, so first we need to talk about sex, because apparently people get confused about sex and gender. Now what people typically try to mean when they mean sex is biological sex. So, we have the typical names that we've given to those, which are male and female, and somewhat recently, I don't have a date for it, but at some point we've discovered intersex, which is genitalia of both male and female, but is not one or the other box, so it is a third separate box. So that is the first thing that we can safely get away with. There are 3 confirmed sexes in the world, and I'm completely removing statistics from the equation. I'm simply saying if it exists in the world, and we can observe it, and we can give it a name, and there are a group of people, which there are, and we can fit them into that box, that biological box, intersex, that would count as a third sex. Nothing political there. I'm just inserting the box that we have described, without any of the social or percentiles or any of that complicated stuff. But that's where gender comes in, because gender apparently is where people get all confused. All over the place. So, let's start with something simple. Let's start with the definition of gender, which I think is very telling. So I'm going to bring my camera over so you're not seeing my face. I'm going to literally bring you over to the Google definition. Boop, 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 boop. And I'm going to read it word for word. How about that? I'm not going to disillude anything. So the first thing, gender, separated by the N and D there, the number one is a noun. Quote, either of the two sexes, male and female, especially when considered with reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones. The term is also used more broadly, meaning, commonly, to denote a range of identities. Range? That's a problem for the right, is it not? Range indicates more than two. That already corresponds to this idea that there are more than two in the definition alone. So that's the first thing we need to establish right there. It's in the definition of gender, that do not correspond to established ideas of male and female. That's interesting, is it not? And we could talk about that specific thing later. Grammar. In language such as Latin, Greek, Russian, and German, each of the classes, typically masculine and feminine, by the way, those are the two genders that the right keep trying to push on us, and common and neuter. Now, to be quite honest with you, I've never heard of the words common and neutered used in this reference to gender, but I have heard of gender neutrality outside of this, so we'll talk about that too. Of nouns and pronouns distinguished by the different inflections that they have and require in words synthetically associated with them. Grammatically, gender is only very loosely associated with naturally distinctions of sex. That sounds like the definition of gender is saying it's not that connected to sex as we think it is, and people keep, and this is a hit against the left, is that they keep doing it. They keep saying gender is this sex thing, and they keep doing it, and they keep getting confused by the difference. And the definition is telling us that is not the case. And again, to reaffirm, over here on the right, gender is a range of characteristics pertaining to femininity and masculinity. Again, those believed to be on the right, those are the only two that they believe exist in the world, because it's the only two examples that they're giving us, indifferently between them, depending on the context. This may also include sex-based social structures and gender identity. Now, I don't like the word structures in this case. I'd rather use the word group, because social group is actually what we are talking about when we're talking about gender, and this whole big concept. And gender identity simply means the identifier of which gender you most closely align with, whether that be the two that it's currently giving us, which is femininity and masculinity. Okay? So I'm going to bring it back to me. Hello, I'm back. So, now we have sex. We have male, female, and intersex. And we have gender, a separate thing, a social thing, obviously. And the two that the right would like us to believe exist, because it's the only example that's given in this example here, is masculinity and femininity. Those are the two, right? So let's look at that. Let's first look at masculinity. Let's currently look at the two we have, figure out what they are, and then figure out, are there other things, other social boxes that we can tick, and can we apply certain sexes to them, and so on and so forth. Let's do it that way. That's the best way I can think to do this, right? So under masculinity, obviously that has something to do with muscle. Obviously, it's sort of where that word derives from, obviously. So to simply work out, or to simply be in an environment that promotes such things. Now, what people on the right will typically try to do is say, well, under these two constraints that we currently have, it is typically more often that men will partake in masculine activities, because their brains are hardwired to do so, because there's a sex part of the brain that is either male or female, and that is internal. It is a part of you. And I want to clarify that because there are other things that other people on the right do that I think are demonstrably put out of context and fearmonger and do all that nonsense, right? So, again, they will generally say masculinity. Majority of men would typically fall under that category, and typically most females would fall under femininity. However, big however, with the asterisk there, that is not one-to-one. That's just how the real world works. It always has. That's the reality of it. There have been men who prefer more feminine things, and there have been women who like more masculine things. Well, now we have a bit of crisscross, right? And we can denote that with, again, social and this whole gender dysphoria thing, and we can actually talk about that and what that actually means, right? We can actually start to have that conversation too, right? Because under gender dysphoria, what that actually would mean in an ideal sense, literally, is say a woman or a girl is in a group of other girls, and they're like, I'm not feeling it. This whole feminine thing that they're partaking in, that's not me. I have this sort of, my brain isn't functioning in that way. So, I'm going to check out what the boys are doing. They're doing the more masculine thing. Let me wear what they're wearing. Wear more masculine clothes, not manly clothes, masculine clothes. And let me become what's known as a tomboy. A gender identity, if you will. And I know that the boy part, that might trick people, right? It's like, oh, got him, right? Hang in there, because gender is complicated. We're about to go down the rabbit hole. So, we have that. And then we have on the other side, we have men, or boys, who might prefer to wear pink. Not even necessarily a dress, just pink. My favorite color is pink. How about that? I'll give you a personal example. Anecdotal. My favorite color is pink. Hello. That's just me. My favorite color is pink. How about that? My favorite color is a feminine color. It is not a female color, it is a feminine color. I'm making the distinction between sex and gender at this point right now. Okay? So, we have that. And we have the two boxes of masculinity and femininity. And that's all gender dysphoria really is. The whole sex change thing is a completely separate discussion that I know that the right consistently kinda tries to push with gender. They tie it together. Sorry for the obvious cut, but couldn't be helped that time. Anyways, as I was referring to gender, just to re-establish who I was, so the whole gender dysphoria thing is simply looking at, again, if we were to look at a girl, a sex, and go, the dysphoria they are feeling around other girls is uncomfortable, so they wear boy clothes, or masculine clothes is the more accurate description, right? Because it's, again, not one-to-one. Therefore, it alleviates their gender dysphoria. That is what gender dysphoria would be. Not sex dysphoria. Uh-oh. That's right, I'm making the distinction between gender dysphoria and sex dysphoria. Because those are two different things. In fact, I would go as far as to say is, there is a difference between being transgender and being transsexual. Okay? Again, sex and gender are different things, so there should be different classifications for the two different dysphorias that I don't think gets covered easily enough. Again, that's for the left and for the right, because people don't know that, right? Pretty simple, now that I'm here. Sophisticated, educated, Mustached Tom here. Small subscriber base, but that's totally fine. So, now that we have established masculinity and femininity, and that neither one of them are one-to-one with the sex that we've put them into, and if we were to use the recess example, which is the perfect example for this early, development, right? If you had a recess, and you put all the boys and girls in there, again, typically speaking, the boys would primarily be on one side, and the girls would typically be on the other side, socially speaking. And again, that is not one-to-one. Sometimes the girls would intersect with the boys, and sometimes the boys will intersect with the girls. Again, that is all the social boxes of the two that the right believes there are. Now, let's talk about the thing that is above both masculinity and femininity. Because it exists. We have a word for it. I know it's crazy, but gender neutrality is a thing. I hate to be that guy, but I don't hate to be that guy. I love to be that guy, because we need to discuss, and clearly need to discuss apparently, what gender neutrality is, because people, I think, forget what gender neutrality is. And the easiest way to denote that is through color theory, I think. It's probably the easiest way. So, we have denoted that certain colors, through society, fall under either masculine or feminine, if we're using those two boxes, or gender neutrality. Uh-oh. That sounds like a different gender box than the two that we've already established. More than two? Oh no, it sounds like there are 3 gender boxes. Uh-oh. The right is wrong already. But let's say that their counter-argument is gender neutrality is too broad. It covers everything. And that would be a fact, that it does cover pretty much everything. In fact, without human social groupings saying that that's what socially is close to the truth, then everything would be gender neutral. Every color would be gender neutral without human intervention. Every emotion would be gender neutral via gender expression. Every piece of clothing that people would wear would be, gender neutral without human intervention in the first place. So now we have the social boxes. Now we have 3 of them. But if we don't want to count gender neutrality because it is too broad, we can still look at other social boxes because, again, unfortunately, this definition only counts 2 of them. And again, my whole argument for this entire video is that there always has been more than 2. We already have words for them that people keep forgetting on the left to use, and it frustrates me that they don't use them because it completely destroys the right's entire argument by a simple mathematic equation. All you have to do is go masculinity 1, femininity 2, gender neutral 3 if you count it, or if it's too broad for them, you can simply go backwards and say, okay, so if it's a social grouping, and that's all we're talking about, a social grouping, is there another social group that can congregate together and have certain things in appearance, look, attitude, the way they talk, feel, behave outwardly? That's all you would have to fulfill to get another box. And there are more than 2. They're more than masculine and they're more than feminine. Ready for another one? Nerd. Uh-oh. The argument's broken. Think about it. Nerd. What do nerds do? They congregate together. They talk about more education, right? They're more focused on the field of studies that, are ingrained in our schools, and they pursue those things later on in life, typically speaking. And what do we see pushed out back socially through, say, something like television? What is the #1 mark of a nerd in social television? Glasses. Think about it, right? If you see a person with glasses, you might think to yourself, you might ask yourself, is that person a nerd? Are they going to congregate with other nerds? And again, check this out. Nerd does not, is not explicit to any of the 3 sexes we have established at the beginning of this video. A man can be a nerd. A woman can be a nerd. Intersex people can be a nerd. They congregate together. There's a social understanding of what that is. It has a name, nerd. They might partake in certain things. They might look a certain way. And that's all it takes to be a gender. That's it. Because that's all it takes to be masculine. A social group that comes together and works out. That's it. End of discussion. There might be other things that you can put in the masculine category, which we do with language. Again, the color blue, more recently anyways, has been denoted as a masculine color, not a man color, a masculine color, and again, feminine pink. And by the way, to talk about that history I was talking about earlier in the video, historically speaking, it was flipped. Pink used to be the man's color, and blue used to be the girl's color. Uh-oh. And why was that? We can actually denote why. Because more gay men were in fashion that did pink clothes for men. That's why. Simple. Again, no politics came from that discussion about history. I just denoted history. That's it. No politics. Just discussing history. Again, I'm trying to remain as apolitical as possible while, dismantling the right sort of idea of the two gender thing, and then helping the left hopefully understand the separation between sex and gender, hopefully, is what this video is meant to do. So, now that we have 3 boxes, if we're removing gender neutrality from the equation, is there another social box that a group of people can congregate to become? Yes, Gothic people. What do Gothic people behave like? What do they look like? They primarily wear black. They may wear chains on their pants. They might dye their hair black or a darker color, like a purple or a dark blue. They might talk a certain way. They might talk about death and destruction and all that crazy stuff that might sound crazy to you and I, but to them, they are congregating together and they are finding a social acceptance, a gender identity that they can identify with and in-group into that. That's all that is. That's all gender is. Not, again, nothing about sex am I mentioning in this. So here we go. Can men be Gothic? Yes. Can women be Gothic? Yes. Can intersex people be Gothic? Yes. Done. Amazing. Gothic people, that is a gender, therefore, there we go. And what about the more promiscuous genders? Uh-oh. That's right, we're going to talk freely and open about this, because from what I understand, the right wants that open discussion, so I'm here to combat that with, well, here I am, openly discussing it. And I hope that this video permanently destroys every gender discussion you've ever heard come from the right about there being only 2 genders, because I've already established 4. So now we can talk about now we can get a little bit fun. Let's get a little bit promiscuous. What about furries? Uh-oh, that's right. What do furries do? They congregate at FurryCon. They dress up in furry costumes. That is their gender group. Their gender expression. Is there a money value behind that? Yes, because there is a money value to buying clothes in the first place. It just happens that buying a furry costume is more expensive than buying typical, everyday clothing. That's it. That's the only difference. It's still a gender, despite the money value attached to that gender. That is a gender expression because it is a social group congregating together in grouping with other furries, and that's it. And again, you could do this with other groups. Bronies, again, same thing, and that has a correlated thing to a particular show now. That's it. What do they wear? They wear the little, brony, memorabilia that they get at BronyCon. They wear the hooves or the wings on their backs. That's all gender is. Clothing, expression, the way you talk. Nothing to do with sex. Can men be bronies? Well, bro, that's actually where that would denote from, and then there's a slightly different word that differentiates within the brony community for females, but that's besides the case. But still, as a collective, they still, you know, they might extend it to bronies and Peggy sisters, I believe they call it. It's been a while since I've been a part of that community, so I don't remember if that's the correct term or not. But still, it is a group of people congregating together, having a social grouping and understanding of what it is to be in that in-group. Now, can a person, again, be both feminine and masculine? If I'm working out at the gym, and then I decide I'm still going to be emotional with my feelings and very feminine things, I can do both of those things. I can be in both of those boxes at the same time. I can like a feminine color, pink, and still like the color red too, which is a masculine color. Oh no! I'm in 2 boxes at once. Can I be at 3 boxes at once? Potentially, yes! Could there be a masculine nerd? Now, typically speaking, no. That would be a rarity. I'll grant you that, but it's not impossible. Again, you would just have to maintain and want that lifestyle. If you see both of those lifestyles and you say, I would really like to get an education, but I really also like working out. That's all you would have to fulfill to get into those 2 boxes. And where would you go? Congregate in a masculine place? A gym! We have a place for it. How about that? How about a feminine place? Perhaps more closer to a book club. Yeah, oh, that's right. Books are feminine. Not female, feminine. Again, separating gender from sex. So now we have 4 different groups. 5 if you count the furries that I just mentioned, and 6 if you count the bronies. Are there other gender expressions that we have in the world? Are there even gender expressions that denote closer to a sex? Yes, there are, and they have names too. How about that for crazy and gender? I just blew the lid wide open. Yes, a valley girl is a gender expression. They behave a certain way, they congregate together, they talk in a certain way, they say, oh my god, Becky, they use the voice, they have the inflection, they have a hairstyle. All gender expression. That's all it is. In-grouping, social box, that's all gender is. And I've named 7 of them. And the right has the absurdity, the absolute audacity to say that there are 2? What a joke! Those people are joking at you on the left, and you people have the resources, and I'm giving you the resources to combat this once and for all. We can erase this debate once and for all, and that's all it took. Wow, a 15-minute-ish video. How about that? To destroy the idea that there are only 2 genders. Whoops, that was easy to do. Well, my name is Thomas the Silly Jr., aka Mustache Tom, and I'll see you guys next time. Also, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, though. Also, you know, do all that fun stuff. Links in the description. The first will head you over to my petition, second and third to my Patreon and PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel. And you can also join my Discord server, where you can join and talk with other YouTubers and collaborate and do all that fun stuff. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye!